Today we ask, could rabies break out in Ireland? Rabies, as I'm sure you are aware, is a horrible disease. It's a frightening disease. Thankfully, a lot of the world is rabies free, including Ireland. There are vaccines, obviously, and anybody who's travelled will know you have to. Certainly, when you're travelling to some parts of the world, you have to be vaccinated. It's an absolutely horrendous disease. Ireland, thankfully, has been rabies free. I think the last case in Ireland was 1902, which is a fair while ago, and in the north, I think it's 1923. I think so. That's good for us here in Ireland. And as a young lad, I do remember distinctly we had often ads on the TV about rabies and the dangers of rabies, and this was obviously aimed at people who might be travelling abroad, possibly wanting to take their pet, or possibly people coming back from abroad with animals. It was really taken very seriously, and with good reason. Now, being an island gives us a huge advantage because, you know, the only way an animal with rabies, carrying the rabies disease, can get here is if somebody brings them. They can't swim across. So why am I making this video? Well, war is a terrible, terrible thing. There's no upside to war. It's all downsides. One of the offshoots, or one of the repercussions of conflict is you'll have a huge outpouring of refugees, obviously, from the war zone. And we have currently an ongoing terrible situation in Ukraine, atrocities of all kinds happening on a daily basis, and it's just a terribly sad situation there for everyone concerned. One of the things that is not getting talked about and should be talked about, and I'm going to talk about it now, is that with the outpouring and the movement of refugees, there's also a movement of their pets. They're bringing their pets with them, and that's what you would do. You know, a pet for most people is like another family member, and that's perfectly understandable. Now, where that gets complicated is when you have a movement of people to other countries, pretty much unfettered, not going through the normal channels for obvious reasons. There's an imminent danger to the people involved. They're fleeing war and the atrocities of war, and their pets are going with them. You can't process them in the normal way. That has always been the case in situations like this. So when you're not processing people in the normal fashion, in the normal way, who are moving, let's say, to your country, you're also not processing their pets, should they bring them along. Now, let's look at a couple of things that are happening in regards to Ireland, because Ireland has, it seems to me, become the virtue signal capital of the world. Move over, Sweden. The Irish are here. Now, we started off, of course, wanting to do everything that we could to help the Ukrainian people, and I fully agree with that, and I'm totally on board with that. So we said we initially take 20,000. Well, the next day that became 40,000, and a couple of days later that became 80,000, and then it was 200,000, and then after that it just said, look, we're not even going to put a figure on it. Come one, come all. But with that amazing and wonderful virtue signal to the whole world also came the pet issue. Because not only are we inviting in and taking in large numbers of unfortunate Ukrainian people. We're also taking in their pets with little to no regulation. Now, Ukraine has rabies. Rabies exists in Ukraine right now. They never eradicated it. It's ongoing. So let's have a look at what is going on here. First, we will go to, who have we got? RTE. All right, let's start with the national broadcaster. Let's go straight to the inner sanctum. So RTE, as you know, I don't have a lot of time for RTE. It's just a mouthpiece of the government, essentially. But let's say what they have to say, because this is kind of official Ireland, if you like. More than 600 Ukrainian pets have arrived in Ireland, says RTE. This is from April, so it's a few weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, 20th of April this year. Okay, let's read a little bit of this from Joe Magrole. He's the agricultural consumer affairs correspondent. Joe says more than 600 pets from Ukraine have arrived in Ireland with their owners since the Russian invasion in February. Ireland and other EU countries have waived normal biosecurity and pet travel requirements in light of the ongoing humanitarian crisis. News footage since the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine has frequently featured fleeing families with their pets in tow. Recognising the importance of family pets during the trauma of war that the war has brought, the European Commission permitted normal strict rules on pet movements to be loosened to allow for pet travel. Ireland is one of the countries to adapt the rule. Lads, copy editor needed here. Ireland is one of the countries to adapt the rules, and around 618 dogs and cats have so far arrived with their owners. In addition, a number of small household pets have also arrived. Hamsters, I suppose, and I don't know, goldfish or whatever. Canaries and parrots. I don't know. The Department of Agriculture is taking the lead on processing these animals and bringing them into compliance with required health and biosecurity standards once they arrive in Irish ports. That begins with microchipping and vaccination against rabies for dogs and cats and treatment of tapeworm. The pets are then required to enter home quarantine. Owners receive instructions from the department on what they need to do to ensure compliance. Okay, so essentially what I'm taking out of this is, the pets, they're all coming in. People, pets, dogs, cats, canaries, goldfish, whatever. They're getting a cursory check by a vet, assuming, they come in and they're known to have come in. It's not a big full on. I remember back in the day, it was onerous if you wanted to bring a pet in or bring your pet on holiday and coming back. You were talking months in quarantine, months in a kennel before you got it back. That was how seriously rabies was taken, and with very good reason. Now that's all gone by the wayside. Reading in this, they're basically saying, look, we'll give them a quick check at the airport or the port, wherever they land. We'll give them a quick shot or something, and then you go off to wherever you're staying, and it's home quarantine is what they said there. Home quarantine, to me, when you're talking about rabies, is a pretty risky proposition, because where are they going to stay? There's already huge problems with accommodation, full stop. So a lot of them are staying in hotels, B&Bs. Some are staying with people, although the amount of people who said they'd take refugees compared to the amount of people who actually did take refugees is slightly different. So you've got this animal who's just arrived, hasn't gone through the normal procedures, and is now in home quarantine, which means it could be, I don't know, running around the garden. Neighbour's dog gets into the garden, cats around. The whole thing is a mess. Right, so just going over to the Vet Times, not the publication I read a lot, but let's see what the Vet Times has to say about this. Vet Times, AFA, that's the Animal and Plant Health Association, I think that is. AFA warns of rabies risks from Ukraine. This is more to do with the UK, but it's very similar. I mean, we have the north here, which is part of the UK. So let's see what AFA, the Animal Plant Health Association, says. Follow-up border checks by AFA showed a shipment of 19 animals imported by a rescue charity from Ukraine travelled on falsified rabies documentation. This is from March 29, so again, just a few weeks ago. Nice Ukrainian flag there. You see plenty of those these days all over Ireland. Not so many of the Irish tricolour, but you'll see plenty of those. Okay, right. So let's see what the Vet Times says. Animal rehoming charities, says the Vet Times, have been urged to ensure rescues entering the country have the necessary paperwork after an illegal movement of Ukrainian dogs was discovered. Now, as we're hearing from the previous article from RT, they just scrapped the whole thing. Paper schmapers. They don't need papers anymore. You don't need anything. Just come as you are. Just put your dog in a wee basket or whatever, your cat, your budgie, and just carry on. It'll be all grand, is the attitude now, it seems, from the Irish authorities. Rabies risk. Let's go back to the Vet Times here. The dogs had been rehomed and fostered by families across the UK, but local authorities and the AFA are now tracing the animals to protect public health and ensure the UK remains rabies free. So you can already see where the wheels can come off this wagon very fast. So this charity, doing good work and all that, rescued some dogs, falsified some documents, got them into the UK, and then just kind of, got unsuspecting members of the public to adopt them. Again, the members of the public thinking, we're doing good work, we're doing a good thing here, we're helping these poor, unfortunate animals, that have come from Ukraine. And do you see where the problem can be here? If you don't do things properly, things can get out of hand real fast, and it can get really, really nasty. Rabies is nasty. So let's go on. CVO, Chief Veterinary Officer Christine Middlemass, said checks have confirmed that these animals did not receive necessary blood tests to enter the UK. We are taking quick action to limit the risk of disease spreading by quarantining all animals involved in this case until further notice. So there you go. Anyway, right, that's what the Vet Times has to say. Now, I know it's the UK, it's not Ireland, but the UK and Ireland, we have got Northern Ireland is the UK, so we have an open border there. If rabies gets into the south, or breaks out in the south, it's going to be in the north, and vice versa. It's all the one. Now, right, let's move on and see what let's see what the rules of the game are. This is gov.ie. Right again to the centre source, the actual government document itself. This is what the government Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine has to say about rabies. Now, this was updated on the 12th of May 2022, so it was updated yesterday, essentially. So that's pretty, and the reason it was updated, I'd say, is because they're literally just scanning all the regulations and throwing them in the bin. Right, let's see what it says here. What is rabies? We know what rabies is. What animals are affected by rabies? Well, primarily, as it says here, mammals. It's humans, yeah, but it's birds, snakes, fish, but cats, dogs, foxes, bats, that sort of thing. But for the main risk, in relation to the main risk, we're talking dogs and cats, essentially. Can humans become affected? We know they can. Where is it present? Rabies, it says here, rabies is still endemic in some European Union member states, Poland, Romania. These countries have an eradication program. Other European countries affected by rabies include, for example, Russia, Ukraine. There you go. Ukraine. Told you. Anyway, how could rabies enter Ireland? This is again from the government, straight from the horse's mouth. The most likely way rabies would be introduced into Ireland is through an animal which already has the disease entering Ireland from abroad without meeting all legal border controls. It is extremely important that anyone who plans to bring a pet animal into Ireland complies with the legal requirements for pet travel that are in place to prevent rabies occurring here. That's just been thrown in the bin. That paragraph there, which is the government's own website, gov.ie, that's the government's own website. This is the government talking. The Irish government. How could rabies enter Ireland? Well, they're saying how it could enter Ireland, and they're saying it is extremely important, says the government. It is extremely important that anyone who plans to bring a pet to Ireland complies with the legal requirements. And now they're saying, in the next breath, because of this attempt to virtue signal, to hell with that. Doesn't matter. No, bring your pets. Don't worry about all that stupid paperwork. That was last week. That was last year. We don't need all that. No. Be grand. Just bring your dog, your cat, your budgerigar, your parrot. Bring them in. All welcome. Do you see how this can go wrong? When your own government, when your own authorities decide that a virtue signal is far more important than the protection, the health of the people in your nation, your own citizens' health. It's not good. You're in a bad place. And that's what we have here. Because I'm reading you the actual government document that says it's extremely important that anyone who plans to bring a pet animal into Ireland complies with all the legal requirements. And in the next breath they're saying, no, sorry, we have a problem now. There's a war going on somewhere. We've decided we're going to invite them all in. Many as you want. No cap, no limits. Hand your pets. From a rabies country. A country that has rabies. Today, they're trying to eradicate it. Anyway, yeah. All right, do we need to read any more of this? How can we continue to keep Ireland free from rabies? Well, good luck. It's going to be just potluck. To keep Ireland, let's see what the government says. How, oh great dear government, how can we keep Ireland free from rabies? Tell us. To keep Ireland free from rabies, there are movement rules for bringing pets into Ireland from other EU member states, and there are also import controls on animals entering Ireland from non-EU countries. No, there isn't. No, not anymore. Not anymore, there isn't. You might... Somebody delete this. Somebody, whatever civil servant's in charge of this page, just delete that off, because it's not true anymore. Not true. These import controls differ according to the species of animals and the country of origin. Visit the pet travel page of gov.ie. No, I won't bother my arse, because it's all bunk. You've just said no. If the pet's coming from Ukraine, it's all grand. Don't worry about it. No, forget about it. Regulations? Who needs regulations? Never let regulations get in the way of a good virtue signal. So says Irish politicians, and that seems to be the way Irish politics is working these days. And let's... Wait a minute, what's this? Irish Examiner. State struggling to accommodate the pets of Ukrainian refugees. Did anybody see that coming? Did anybody see that coming? Anybody? Anybody in the room see that coming? The Cork Examiner, or the Examiner as it's called now. State, that's the Irish state. Remember last page, gov.ie? Yeah, bunk. Regulations, who needs them? Chuck them in the bin. Not important. Rabies, don't worry about it. Can't happen. It'll all be grand. That seems to be the attitude now. It'll all be grand. Don't worry about it. State struggling to accommodate the pets of Ukrainian refugees. There's a nice picture of a healthy looking dog there. I don't think he has rabies. Okay, let's see what the Examiner has to say. Ukrainian refugees are able to enter Ireland with their pets without all the necessary EU documentation. No, it seems without any EU documentation. Without any at all. Not some, not a bit. It's not like, oh, I've some of these papers, but I haven't got them all. No, you don't need any. Just come as you are. Just put your coat on and you're grand. Bring your dog, cat, fish, whatever. EU documentation, but the state will struggle to accommodate the volume of pets, which we know is over 600 at the moment, and counting, which have to be taken into quarantine or isolation upon arriving into the country. Well, they're not going into quarantine, they're going into self-quarantine, which is basically, you know how that works. Let's read on from Neil Michael. This is from the 11th of May, so it's again very fresh, a couple of days ago. A shortage of accommodation for refugees in Ireland has led the state to embark on drastic measures, including getting the army to erect camp beds in community halls. Yes, it's an absolute shit show. The government came out in a great attempt to out Sweden in the virtue signalling stakes and said, listen, we're Ireland. We can solve any problem. No problem's too big for us. Come on, come one, come all. Bring your pets. Bring your granny. Everybody's welcome here. The fact that we have no accommodation and we currently have an actual real life accommodation problem for ourselves never entered their heads. The fact that bringing in pets with absolutely no documentation from a country that has currently got rabies, again, don't worry about it. It'll be grand. Seriously, these are the people running this country now. Let's read on. But now the state is facing another refugee-related accommodation crisis. It cannot accommodate the volume of pets which have to be taken into quarantine or isolation on arrival into the country. This is because there is a nationwide shortage of spaces in kennels and catteries. Catteries? I can't say I've ever been to a cattery. Mainly due to the massive increase in pet ownership during the pandemic. So people, well, you know, we were all locked down for guts of 2 years, so a lot of people went out and got pets to amuse themselves, I suppose. Department of Agricultural officials are now drawing up plans to deal with the crisis after the horses bolted. As usual, as per usual, politicians go out there and say this and say that. It all sounds marvellous, and aren't you wonderful people? And then, of course, they can't back it up. We don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the resources. Never any repercussions for the politicians, not at all. No, they just say these wonderful things, get all the sound bites, get all the press attention, and then walk off into the twilight, into the sunset. It's the rest of us that have to figure it out. Right. So, Department of Agricultural officials, we read on here, are now drawing up plans to deal with the crisis, including a mass transport plan to move pets around the country. 5 3-month contracts worth $1 million each. Okay, don't care about that. Pet travel. Ukrainian refugees are currently able to enter the state with their pets without all the necessary EU. No, not without all. Without any EU documentation. Not without all. You don't need any. Not a scrap. Not a shred. Not some. Not a bit. None. But they must pre-notify the Department of Agriculture that they're coming into the country with a pet, and a period of quarantine is required. No, this is bunk. This is rubbish. I'm sorry. I don't believe a word of this. They must they mustn't do anything. They're just fetching up dogs, cats, fish, butchery guards, I don't know, pet alligators, whatever they have, in baskets, in bags, and on their back, in their coat. Stop it. Stop it now. This, you know, you'd assume there's actually a system here. There's no system. They're arriving. People here don't know where they're from. They have a dog, a cat, whatever with them. Hopefully there's a vet around. Give them a quick once over. Yeah, don't seem to be attacking anybody, so they're probably fine. Give them a shot or something, and then here's a letter that we've written to tell you not to be letting to self-quarantine. Self-quarantining in what? A hotel? How do you do that? How do you manage to self-quarantine a pet in a frickin' hotel? Anyway, let's read on, shall we? Re-notify the department. Would you give me a break? At least 485 refugees from the war-torn country had arrived in Ireland with just over 600 pets up to April 20th, so it's obviously more than that now. With over 95% of the pets being either cats or dogs. However, a new tender notice says there's a certain case where a vet might want to isolate some animals for a period following arrival into Ireland. So if they're getting a quick shufty from a vet, giving them a quick, look over to make sure they look pretty non-rabid, the vet might say, listen, not so sure of it, there might be some issues here. It might not be rabies, it could be, other stuff, tapeworm or whatever else they have. I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that we don't want to bring in, that animals could bring in. So there could be many reasons. It's not all rabies, but a vet might take a look at an animal and say, listen, I don't like the look of that dog, I don't like the look of that cat, whatever. So for safety, you should quarantine them. The problem is, says the Examiner, the problem is that there is a nationwide shortage of places to isolate or quarantine pets. Nowhere to put them. So even if a vet says, listen, I don't like the look of this dog or cat, nowhere to put them. Nobody thought this through. Or politicians. Thinking faculties, not necessary. The ability to just say a nice virtue signalling soundbite seems to be plenty for a political career in Ireland, in Irish politics. You don't have to back it up. You don't even have to know what you're talking about. Once it sounds good, that's perfect. Go ahead. So now, even if a vet wants to quarantine an animal for a very good reason, and this is, as I said, the animal have to be showing signs, so that's not good, full stop. They've nowhere to send them to. Don't have the spaces, don't have the places. Anyway, a departmental source told the Irish Examiner that officials are, quote, struggling to find places to put the pets. It is understood that there are only around 100 isolation and quarantine centres in Ireland. Vincent Cashman, who manages the CSPCA facility in Mahon Point, County Cork, said, quote, there are very few places to isolate or quarantine cats or dogs in Ireland. He goes on to say, I guess you'd be hard to find more than one or two in any country. That doesn't make me feel any better. I don't care about any other country. I care about a possible rabies outbreak here in Ireland where I live, because knowing my luck, I'll probably be the one that gets bit. Quote, if a dog, for example, has to have a rabies shot, it cannot technically be moved for 3 weeks. And the quarantine in such a case is very, very strict. You see the big writing there? And so this is if they get a shot, they're supposed to basically go out of circulation for 3 weeks completely. Can't just send it home with the owner, who's probably, if they're a refugee, living either in a hotel or a bed and breakfast, or possibly in one of these GAA halls where they have camp beds and stuff. You can't do it. You can't release them. What, the dog's running around the hall with other people there and other dogs, cats, God knows what? Nonsense. It's absolute madness. Madness is what it is. And the quarantine in such a case is very, very strict. The dog cannot mix with other dogs. It cannot touch other dogs. This is a dog that has got the rabies shot. You see how this can't work? It can't work. It doesn't make any sense. Quote, so where you might have 10 dogs in a block, you can only have 2 in there now, and that causes problem with space, as the space has been taken up with very, very few animals. Block booking, echoing the situation with human refugees, where hotels have been block booked to house them, he added. I'd say what the department will probably do is block book kennels and catteries. That, however, is going to cause problems for people who want to go on holiday, because that's where they put their pets or book them into. Quote, I hear that many places are already totally booked out with animals for owners who have booked their holidays. Yes, because a lot of people couldn't go on holidays for the last couple of years. So everybody wants to go on holidays this year. Everybody, even people who wouldn't normally or don't normally go abroad, want to go abroad now because they just want to get the hell out for a change of scenery. And they're all booking their pets, as you have to do, into these places. So they're already full, and it's not like we have a lot of them. So now on top of that, thanks to our virtue signaling gobshite politicians. There's a million ways we could help Ukraine and Ukrainians. A million, 2 million, 20 million ways we could help them. We should help them. But this nonsense, this virtue signalling, come one, come all, bring whatever you want, in any way you want, in any way, shape or form you want, cats, dogs, budgerigars, snakes, I don't know, alligators, buffalo, whatever you have in your, whatever your pet is, doesn't matter. Don't mind the rules, don't worry about the regulations, just bring it, come in, it'll all be grand, and don't worry about any of that rabies stuff. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. It'll be grand. I don't buy it. I'm upset. I'm upset because rabies, if you know anything about rabies, and I did know the basics, but I looked into it a bit more, and rabies spreads, and if it gets out, if it gets into your animal population, you're in for a world of hurt. A world of hurt. There'll be an absolute panic because it's an absolutely frightening disease. And the last thing we need here, on top of all the other problems we have, is children afraid to go outside, afraid to go near a dog, a cat, nobody knowing, that cat that's on the wall there, don't know whose it is because there's plenty of strays and all that. People will just be locking their kids indoors, and they're already doing that already pretty much because PlayStations are all the rage, as you know. But now people will, if that gets going or it gets out, they'll be afraid to go outside their door for fear of a dog you don't know, a cat you don't know. Who wants to live like that? We've never had to live like that, and I certainly don't want to start living like that. But thanks to this nonsense, virtue signaling bullshit that our politicians seem intent on doing at every hand's turn, I'm telling you here and now, there could be, please God there won't, but there could be an outbreak of rabies in Ireland.